Jazakallah khair for both of you being on. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. We're here, not at MIC, we're here at the MIC's annual homeschooling conference virtually. Inshallah, we hope this week has been helpful to everyone as we prepare for the upcoming school year. Yesterday, we discussed how to make curriculum and assessment decisions for your children. And today we're going to talk about creating a balance or working towards a balance. Because it's always, always working towards that in our homeschooling home. This is so important, especially now that many of our homeschooling families are cut off from their co-ops and classes. So throughout the night, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions, and I'll be building them into our panel, inshallah. I'm excited to introduce our speakers for the evening. Alhamdulillah, yes, Sister Amanda is back with us tonight. Sister Amanda has 6 children, ages 2 to 12 years. She prefers to follow the child's lead and not just one curriculum. She has a bachelor's in education with a minor in child development and has taught for more than 15 years. Amanda also runs a small business and works as an independent contractor for an outfit agency. And alhamdulillah, we have Dr. Altaf Hussain here with us tonight. He's a native of Cleveland, Ohio, and a double alumnus of Case Western Reserve University. He's earned his bachelor's in biomedical engineering and a master's in social work, and he received his PhD in social work from Howard. He serves as the vice president of the Yaqeen Institute for Islamic Research, the board member of the Conscious Kid Library, which I recently used, and it's, mashallah, it's a great resource, and an advisory board member for the Peaceful Families Project. His past service, as many of you may know, is vice president, 2-term vice president of the Islamic Society of North America. And most importantly, his family has homeschooled all 4 children from 18 to 6, with the 18-year-old, mashallah, graduating from homeschool high school this year. Alhamdulillah, that's great. So thank you both so much. And what I'd love for you to do, it's such a big topic, and we've had so many questions about this from homeschooling families as we're trying to figure out all the different elements of homeschooling. But could you give us a glimpse of how a typical day may look in your house with homeschooling, and not just homeschooling, but just a typical day with your family? Sister Amanda, do you want to start us off? Yeah,
I can start off. Okay, so basically, now that the kids are a little bit older, I'll go with the older, type of schedule right now, and then I'll quickly just summarize some of the differences when the kids were younger. So now that they're older, the day is kind of broken down into chunks. The oldest kids have independent learning in the morning, and the younger kids are with me. We do, like, the younger kids will do reading, writing, and math together in the morning with the toddler. The toddler gets busy boxes and things like that that I can go over later what those are, that keep him pretty interested and engaged. But sometimes he'll come hang out with us too, which is fine. He doesn't, he's really an easy child. He does participate in some of it. So some days we head outside for our lessons versus being inside with the little kids. And then once the big kids are kind of wrapping up and finishing, sometimes they'll join us. A lot of stuff we do is nature-based when we go outside. So they enjoy it and they add to it. And I think that they help the little kids, with some of their various interests and things like that. Then we come back inside for the hood, we pray, eat, and I follow up with the older kids on what they've done and if they had any questions. At any time, the bigger kids will come to me and ask me if they get stuck on something, which is fine. It's not a big deal at all. The little kids, when I follow up with the big kids, sometimes we'll watch videos and things like that. The little kids kind of hang out there and watch the video if they're interested. If they're not, then they kind of do their own thing and have kind of like free play. Then when everybody kind of wraps up, right, we kind of wrap up. Asr is the end of it. There's no more schoolwork after Asr, but before that, as soon as everyone finishes, they kind of head outside. We play outside. We got the playground. There's a couple of kids in our neighborhood that we kind of play with. They kind of stay home like we do, and aren't out in the public as much. And then we head outside, and then by Asr we come back in, we pray. The big kids will head back outside. Sometimes little kids follow them. And then by 7 p.m. everybody's inside. 6, I make sure the littles are inside with me. I make dinner. Then everybody's inside, and then we do dinner, teeth, and bed, and that's it, right? So I think in my particular case, right, with the older kids and the younger kids, it's a little bit easier than when they were all little, right? So when I had my little one and the baby, and then shortly after that, another baby. It was a little bit different. Some people think that, okay, well, my schedule, we have to do everything in the morning. And that's when schooling has to take place. And I think some of that, is due to public school or regular brick and mortar schooling. And you think that you have to do from 9 to 5, and that's our school day. When I had the first one and the second one and the third one, really the schooling took place at all times of the day. I would use nap, and I would, we would work together then. I would use the nighttime, interestingly enough. He was kind of a night owl. So as soon as I put baby to bed at 8, we were up doing projects and things like that where I could focus on him. So I used a lot of the sleeping time and kind of a crazy schedule, whatever worked, to get him what he needed. So I hopefully, sorry if I talked too long on that, and I'll go ahead and let the.
That's a great start. Brother Altaf?
Sure. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Sister Amanda has a back-to-back session, so she's already in the zone from yesterday. So just in terms of some background, I am here by invitation of the education director, my good friend and family friend, but actually my wife is the genius behind homeschooling. So I want to make sure that up front everybody understands. And I looked at the participants list. I may be the only man on the call tonight, so thank you for making sure that that ratio stays, realistic. But I hope that people understand that it's a combined effort. And I just wanted to say that at the beginning that although my schedule is tested from my regular work at the university and then community work with travel and everything, I do what I can to assist. And our schedule is not very different from what Sister Amanda mentioned. And so, for example, in the mornings, the children, are, because of the ages now, almost all of them, at least the top older 3 are able to get up for Fajr prayer. So that portion of the day is a part of the homeschooling, because I know a lot of times for public school, it becomes a little bit of a compromise, in terms of, well, do we wake them up closer to the bus pickup time, and therefore, what happens to Fajr and so forth. So we've tried to do our best to make sure that part of it is there. And for that portion, I'm usually there. The rest of it is, as Sister Amanda said, based on the idea that we try to schedule every day to the best of our ability. So if we have, for example, the idea of doing math, then if one of the children or the others needs more attention, or there's other things happening because of the age group, we have no problem in modifying the schedule. And that's probably the best part of homeschooling, is that it's very flexible and amenable to the moods of the children, first and foremost, because it's their learning that's at our central focus, but also the moods of the parents and whatever else is going on that day, right? So it kind of blends in. The other thing I did want to say is that as a husband and a supporter, if you will, in that sort of routine, I try to manage as much as possible of things that typically I would not be able to do during my daytime schedule. So all the laundry, all the ironing, all the bathroom cleaning, so I jokingly say my wife is the principal, I'm like the janitor and the physical education / driver to ensure everything functions on time. So we do our best with the schedule. And as I said in the beginning, I do hope that more fathers do become a part of that routine to create that balanced environment we're talking about.
Thank you both so much. I think having that picture is really helpful. And Brother Lataf, you're right. Your wife, mashallah, is amazing, and definitely someone who is a leader in the homeschooling community. And I think having you here to talk about the bathroom cleaning and the laundry doing is actually really helpful for all of us to see how that balance is created by the team, by the homeschool family team, right? Not just one person taking the burden of everything to be done. And so, mashallah, both of you have kids at multiple ages, and sometimes it can become tough for parents to figure out how to teach one child at a time, especially if you have 3, 4, 5, or sometimes even 2 kids. How do your families balance the time between between the different ages of kids and their needs? Sister Amanda, would you like to start us?
Okay, sure. Okay, so we have a lot of varying needs. There's also a little girl that comes with us, right, and kind of homeschools with us. So we've got about 7. And amongst those, there are some that need accommodation, right? So there are spaces in our home that we use specifically for, okay, so I have one child that is very audio. So all the extra noise is really hard to focus with. So there are spaces. This child actually gets up earlier than everyone else and starts their work earlier. And then they know that I think that's critical when you're dealing with your child, is that they realize who they are, they know what type of learner they are, and they can advocate for themselves, right? So we've kind of discussed, okay, so what are some solutions, what works, what doesn't work? So they like to wear earphones. And then also when it gets to be too crazy with the younger kids especially, they have a space in the house where they can go and do their work and focus. I think that's important to say because not all the kids are the same, right? So some of the kids can sit at the table and all be working in the same space, but that particular child cannot. I think when working with the flexibility is so key. I'm glad that he mentioned that because there are days where like one child really just wants to go outside and play with their friends, right? A friend knocked at the door and this child really needs that social outlet. So it's okay. You don't have to do your work right then. She always gets her stuff done, right? So it's like, okay, go ahead and go outside, get that out. And then you have 3 other kids that are doing their work. I think just letting go of thinking that you have to control everything all the time and just kind of giving them some of that independence, which is going to take a little while, to be honest, for those of us that are coming from brick and mortar. You know, the kids are used to being told and they're used to being a certain way that they do things. So they haven't really developed maybe yet some of the advocacy for themselves. You know, they don't speak, they don't really know what they want. They don't really know what they need sometimes. So that flexibility, I think, is so key, and being able to give them some of those reins and their own education.
And if I can just add to you know, what Sister Amanda said, I think, you know, with the age differences, these are children, right? And so not only does each come with a particular learning style, she made a differentiation between the more, you know, audio learners as opposed to the visual learners. There are the personality differences. There are those who, in terms of attention levels, how much they need. So what we try to do, because we have, as Sister Khadija mentioned, you know, the oldest is now 18, then 14, a 9-year-old who is the only girl, which has to be mentioned among 3 boys, and then a 6-year-old. So what we tend to focus on is to ensure that the 2 youngest have like a decent amount of attention right at the beginning of the day, so that they're not completely feeling like, and you know, what about me? And so typically what that means is, you know, if I can stagger my schedule to drive into DC to Howard, I may you know, maybe play with them, or you know, spend time reading with them, or do some activity with them, or even do something around the house that involves cleaning or laundry, for example. So if I'm going to the basement to do the laundry, you know, I might take them with me. That gives my wife the independence, you know, to then be able to focus on the older 2 and to be able to get them started. Conceptually, for learning, conceptual and sort of the foundational, you know, material for that day, that typically is helpful to be done in the morning as much as possible, in the beginning of the day, before their mind gets filled up with a whole lot. So we try as best as possible, if there's to be a new concept for that day, that is really tailored towards the morning part. And again, as Sister Amanda mentioned, and I mentioned, the flexibility, it's not hard and fast whereby, you know, somehow, you know, my wife is going to be evaluated, you know, based on, hey, you didn't accomplish this that day. It's just the idea that we want to try it. And if they can get that concept, then throughout the day, we're able to then reinforce the concept, right? Either through worksheets or through real life application. Because if you have to do a trip to mom's grocery store, or, you know, Trader Joe's, or, you know, Giant, or wherever you're going, then whatever you've learned, you can sort of point it out in real life, right? If it's for the youngest ones, if it's a matter of colors or shapes or sizes, you can talk about that. If it's the older ones and some concepts with math or even science for that matter, then you can talk about that. So there's a way to blend in a very natural learning schedule, but also allow each individual personality to emerge, you know, in that process, and not mold them, which I think, and not to constantly critique public school, because I'm a product of that. So is my wife, and some of my best friends are from public schools. But the point is that the teacher only has the ability to go one style, right? Because they don't have the flexibility. They're limited by resources and even time. So, if they have 20, 30 kids in the class, it's very difficult to kind of hone in on that. So I think that's how we try to manage it. And again, it's best to repeat the attention to the youngest children in the beginning, some really fun activities that kind of keep them going, and then allowing them to sort of have the flexibility to interrupt, if you will, and not feel like they're somehow, causing a big, issue by doing so.
I think the topic of the younger children comes up a lot as kind of as distractors, or how do I focus if my younger child? So you guys have given some great suggestions about focusing on the younger children, getting them that attention up front. Do you have any other suggestions for parents? If a child might be a toddler or just want that attention. I know I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. My younger child, no matter what his sister is doing, was like, oh, now I suddenly want to be with you, and I had to be creative. So what are some things that have worked to help, like you said, create, not necessarily push them away, but still acknowledge them, and also give you that time with the other child. And I think, Marshall, it's great that sometimes that Brother Altaf, you're talking about being there. What if your wife is by herself or you're by yourself? If you guys could also talk about that too, Amanda. If you're the only parent at the time, what's some suggestions you can offer?
Yeah, with the little ones, I mean, sometimes things just happen so naturally. I don't remember to. I'm so glad that it's not just one speaker, right? So, in the morning when you wake up, for me, it's the first 3 are the youngest ones, right? So they like to cuddle, they like to do all of that, reading and touching and breakfast, and it's only them. The older ones are still sleeping. So I feel like once you've filled their buckets, as the brother has suggested, they do tend to be a little bit easier to deal with. But I will say that we do a rotation of like items, right? So you can look up on Pinterest or things like that on Google and look up busy boxes, right? So filling them with things that he hasn't seen, especially for the toddler, he's 2, things that he hasn't seen that I can kind of put in a box. And with nothing, I don't say anything. I just put it down. They kind of gravitate toward anything new. That's just the way that child, that age group is. So I feel like, he gets entranced in whatever is going on there, while I can take a few minutes and, go over whatever we're doing. The younger kids stuff not take that long. The work that we have to do with phonics and math and all of that, it could take anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes. If it's an hour, if they're really super engaged or it's stuff that they really want to do, reread and things like that. And then it's kind of like free play, and it's a lot easier. So if he wants to join, he can join. I'll sit him next to me, and he's fine with that if it's something that we're doing that's interesting. Or I have him for his little schoolwork, whatever, I'll have him sit kind of next to us. But managing that age group is all about knowing where they are developmentally, right? So I feel like once you get that toddler kind of engaged with something, if they're somebody that needs a lot, you put the box down, then you have something to switch it with. I feel like if you have like 2 or 3 that you can kind of switch in and out as you're trying to work with the younger ones. But for example, like we'll use, it's a phonics program, right? And it's got, it has songs and stuff in it. So he'll sing it with us. And to be in all honest, like in all honesty, the older kids will do like multiplication tables, for example, and it's a song, right? So everybody's singing it. So like my 5-year-old knows how to multiply, not in the real sense, but has memorized all of the facts almost because we're doing it all together, So I think instead of, sometimes you want to give separate space, but you also want to include. So you've got to know when to work with that. You know what I mean? And just include them if you can, have something ready for them if you can't.
Yeah, and Sister Amanda brings up a good point about, the notion of assembly line education has essentially created this mentality that everyone with the same age has to be sort of kept together with that age group. And we've actually found a lot of blessings in having the youngest ones even if my wife is alone, because I think that Sister Khadija was mentioning that, which typically she is, that to allow them to sort of be busy with what they're doing, but to be listening in, which they do, to what is being taught. So oftentimes for children, songs are a big deal. So like with Right Start Math, yellow is the sun is like, if I hear that one more time, it's a big deal. But then when it starts, the littlest ones realize, hey, this is that routine. We can jump in and do it. And so they also learn in a way that becomes like an absorption without necessarily context or meaning. And that's actually quite healthy because it's in their minds, it's in the back of their minds. And then as they age, with sometimes, depending on when the brain cells are kicking in, even within the same week or month, they might actually gravitate towards a concept that they had only heard of being taught to the other older children. So I say both, try to have something independently for them if you're alone, but also, do your best to see where it's not really that distracting to have them sort of around when you're doing an activity, for the older children, even if it's just one other child, so that they can feel somewhat part of it. If they feel too pushed away, regrettably, they will fight for that attention. And then it just becomes a free-for-all, because at that point, it's just not healthy for anybody for them to try to fight for the parents' attention or their other siblings' attention, because they're also wondering, why is that sibling who typically plays with me not, even giving me the time of day? Like, why are they ignoring me and, and focusing on that? So it becomes almost irrational to try to fight it. So we say, have it in the same space, not too big on and trying to move everything into, everybody in a different room kind of thing, because at that age, you need to supervise them anyway. They're too little. And so it's best to just have them nearby, but as much as possible with things that can keep them interested in sequence. So they may start with one thing and move to another and move to another. So sometimes all we tell them is go back and clean up, which takes another 5-10 minutes of that, and then it keeps them occupied and also learning a good skill, right, in cleaning up what they've made a mess of before they move to the next thing. So it's sort of a routine that builds in. It's built into the schedule, inshallah.
Mashallah, you both made great points, and I do agree that I think including the younger one makes them more willing to listen to you. If you're like, hey, now get a snack or this and that, then if you're trying to exclude them. So talking now about taking that helping build independent experience of learning, right? So how did you ease your children into working independently? What were the steps that you took, and at what point did you feel that they were able to work without your supervision, constant supervision? So Sister Amanda, do you want to start us off?
Okay, I'll kind of say, I don't want to, I want to give him time to talk to first. Okay, so balance for us, or I guess the independent part of it. Okay, so this starts super young. The kids are part of the family unit, right? So they are already helping out, right? So they are part of, whether it's something small like helping with laundry. My little one comes downstairs, he puts the laundry in the in the washer. Everyone has a role to play, right? And my husband is super great at management. So he has helped develop a system where everybody knows their role, everybody knows their job, and then we kind of switch it up. I think sometimes what happens when we're at brick and mortar schools is that we forget that part of community. Not always now, but I do see this happening where it's like kids will come home from school, they get to relax just as if they came home from work, and either mom and dad is kind of picking up the slack and doing most of whatever's going on. I think now that we're all kind of home together, we get to try to do more together. Things should not be all on one person. Everybody gets delegated a task, and that's kind of where we have to be independently. Independently, but working together as a community. So positive environment. When we see the children taking on the leadership roles or leadership skills, and doing what we, what we like, right? We're always positively encouraging them, like, oh, that's a great job. Thank you so much for taking initiative on that. I appreciate it. And just making them know that you noticed. That's always a great way to encourage those types of skills. So even the little ones, when the toddler cleans up, I'm saying, thank you so much for cleaning up. Great job. You cleaned up your toys. I tell my husband, hey, Baba, look what he's doing. He's doing a great job. And then, I feel like they just tend to do more of it. That's what they love, the attention. Just small tasks, letting them feel successful. Don't overburden a small child with something that absolutely is not developmentally appropriate. But keeping it little and contributing. Even when we bring in groceries, it's like every small thing, everybody agrees in the groceries. It's not just one person's job. We all got to work together. We always have a saying, and this is part of our Scouts tradition as well, but it's like, many hands make light work, right? So if we're all chipping in, it takes us 5 minutes. If one person has to do it, it takes like an hour. So let's all work together and get it done, and then we're finished. And just making that part of your mantra. Many hands make light work, and just always saying it, always positive reinforcement, and looking for those leadership skills when we see it in our child, and shining it bright for them so they know what it looks like to be a leader.
Yeah, and actually, I just realized as I was trying to just adjust my screen, I do want to give a shout out to one of the veterans of homeschooling, Sister Mona Salah. I noticed that her name was on the call. I definitely want to acknowledge that, mashallah, my own wife and others were benefited much from her with the homeschooling. So independence is an interesting thing, because as a concept in child development, the notion that a toddler begins to walk, and as they begin to walk and take steps away, their back is to us, but after just a couple of steps they turn around to ensure that we're still there, right? So independence is directly associated with trust, and also with the notion that you're not just going to leave me out there, right, to do this on my own, that you're going to be there, if it's the tricycle or the training wheels on the bike, and then you're holding me, and then you're going to let me go, and then you're still holding the back of the seat as I'm riding, although I'm doing most of the work. So those kinds of images have to be in our minds, because every child is different. So whereas Western concepts tell us to sort of value independence almost to an extreme, we want to be able to acknowledge the fact that every child will not necessarily achieve a level of independence with which we are comfortable, right? Even how they learn, we're not comfortable necessarily at the pace at which they're learning, and we have to adjust ourselves, right? We're very highly driven. We're adults. We've already done essentially all of what we're expected to do, and maybe are still trying to do more. But these children are just learning. So I say with independence, patience is the key. That with every child, be very patient with what level of independence you're expecting of them. And so it can actually be detrimental to their learning if the emphasis on independence is if independence is overemphasized to the degree that they start to doubt themselves, right? To the degree that their self-worth and self-esteem is being affected because they look at their siblings and are like, I'm not like them. It seems like I want to be like them, but I'm not. Well, maybe not. It'll take you a little bit longer, but you'll get there, right? And so I encourage parents, and my wife does this a lot better. She's a lot more patient, so that each person's pace is different. And so you want them to learn the concepts, as I mentioned earlier in the day, and then as they're applying them, they may need a little bit of help to go back. But the good thing is that, again, there's no pressure in that day. There's no pressure even in that week. If not a lot gets done, but we've done a lot of emotional intelligence building, that's a win. That's really a big win. The other concepts will come later, but the idea that they value, why am I learning to be independent, right? And what is the as Sister Amanda mentioned, the reward that I get for exercising some level of initiative, because independence is very closely tied to initiative, right? And oftentimes we forget that you can compliments and these things, inshallah, will help them to realize that it's good that you're starting to to learn to manage. For example, when my wife is alone, right? And the children in the earlier years are not potty trained, right? So she essentially, there's no other way about it, has to drop whatever she's doing to manage that particular event, right? That's an event. Because when I was growing up, we literally, I don't even remember how we learned how to do all of these potty. Now there's a whole song and there's a dance and there's a routine, and I'm like, good Lord, man, just get it out, right? And let's go on. But then she has to drop everything to be able to manage that. So maybe we'll get frustrated and say, why aren't they doing it fast enough? Because the other sibling was, and some of these words come out. We end up saying that out loud. We end up comparing. So just be patient with the independence part, in addition to what Sister Amanda mentioned.
I think one of the key themes this week has been the theme of empowerment. And I think that you guys have both touched on that and reiterated that really part of homeschooling is not just filling the bucket, it's with academic knowledge, but also help children feeling empowered and growing into empowered adults. So mashallah, thank you. One of the things that's come up a lot, especially now that we're at home so much, is screen time. And I think that before, we could be out more and doing more outdoor activities. How do you guys, have you started thinking about that, or maybe in the past, like how do you balance screen time, physical activity, hands-on learning, so that your children are getting a good dose of each and not maybe too much of the screen time?
I mean, okay, so
Sister Amanda, why don't you kick us off?
sure. Okay, so at my house, there are screen time limits. They finish their work, especially the older ones. They have a certain amount of screen time that they're allowed to have in terms of what they want to do. They like Minecraft and things like that. So they are allowed, once they finish their work, if they want to do that. And they do every day. Monday through Friday, they're allowed some time. So after that, they have to get outside. So, and they spend a lot of hours outside, especially, in the summer. And I feel like that's how we balance it. Normally, pre-COVID, we were, running around doing scouts and volleyball and sports and all of this. And right now that's just not feasible. So they're outside, and, in our particular neighborhood, there's space for them to ride their bikes and to, do skateboards and all that stuff. There's a playground. I think for families that don't have that space, definitely have to take some time and think about, okay, how can we get outside? I see so many moms, especially after they have babies and things, and they're just not in the right, I have years when I'm feeling great and years where I don't feel that great. Part of it is because I'm not taking care of myself, I'm not eating right, I'm not getting outside enough. And I feel like, especially in our community, a lot of our women especially don't tend to get outside as much as they need to. And I think that you can see it reflected in how down some women feel. So I really feel like getting outside for the kids and for us as adults needs to be part of the day and worked into the day, regardless if it's a little rain. My kids are out no matter what, unless it's lightning. It's just because there's a lot of them and they need space, So I feel like for us, some of the older kids do have like some online classes that they take, but by Dhuhr, around 1 or 2, maybe a little bit after Dhuhr, they're outside, and they're outside. Most of them are outside until Asr. So, and then they come in, they'll eat a snack or something, and then I'll head back outside. So it's like we just spend a lot of time out there in general. And if it's not something that you're comfortable with, and it's not part of your daily routine, just try to figure out at least an hour, at least 2. I feel like 2 hours is where it should be at minimum, but at least an hour, especially for those little kids.
And screen time for us was a very intentional decision, or screen anything really, because we had done enough research, my wife and I, that we understood that that very just barrage of fast moving imagery, music, a lot of that was going to be impacting the children. And so we had decided early on that we wouldn't make that the centerpiece of anything. And so a lot of time, especially the older two, and even to some degree, until the pandemic now, for the younger ones, the screen wasn't a go-to thing. And so it became like a treat. like if they had done enough outdoor activity, as Sister Amanda mentioned, playing outside, just being creative, making things with their crafts and projects and things on their own, then ultimately they would have some access to it. Of course, now with the oldest one, that's basically his life, and that's another story, because he has his own phone and he's doing community college, and so he's doing online classes. The 14-year-old did a full 1 year online, a school, the Legacy online, international online high school. So he did screen time. But the 9 and 6-year-old, for example, it's literally called 8th day. Like they came up with that. So every 8 days, I'm not kidding, I'm not making it up. Every 8 days, they get half an hour each of whatever show they would like to watch. Then they got smart about it and realized instead of doing 2 independent half hours, they do 1 half hour with one person and they share it, and then they get another, so they get 1 hour, and that's fine. They pulled a fast one, but the point is that they get to have that only as a go-to, as a every 8th day, as a treat. It's not something they rely on. One of the benefits of that, and I really want to talk about that, is that the screen cannot be the center of the mom and dad's life, but not the kid's life. So there has to be a consistency. So for example, we don't have a TV. I mean, we have a TV, but we don't use it. Like we don't use it. We don't, my wife and I don't use it. Nobody uses it. So there's not a thing whereby they know that, oh, there's something like, very endearing about that. So we should look forward to it. We just don't use it. Sitting still, right? And doing things. If I'm busy and I'm on the computer or I'm doing something for work, I can easily say to them, look out the window, and tell me, what do you see, to the younger ones, right? And they can say things like, oh, wow, look, almost all the leaves have grown back on this tree. And you think, wow, like who pays attention to the seasons changing? Well, they can if they're not distracted and so, engrossed in another life that's being, sort of, where they're a passive a participant in that sort of formula. So we do our best with screen time, but clearly with the younger ones, it's becoming much more common. They even have Zoom calls for, as you know, Sister Khadija, your children also with the Arabic, so they're on that call, and they even want to get on early, like 5-10 minutes, just to play around with nothing, with the settings and the, whatever, because that's how they're, they want to interact with it. We say don't be unnatural about it, right? So don't be so harsh that they almost want to sneak behind you to get screen time or do whatever, and yet don't use it so that, oh, I want my peace of mind because I've been working and whatever, so go do whatever. That's not a good formula either. So again, in the session today, we're talking about a balanced environment. The balance would be is you can watch something supervised, so we know what you're kind of watching, but you can also know that you can survive completely okay without it. And it's the community, actually, and we need to talk about this. And Sister Amanda, I'd love to also hear your views, and Sister Khadija, your experience. I think the community, sometimes our children who are homeschooled constantly feel like there's some kind of like, aliens from another planet when they interact with other children in the community, because there's variations in how these things are done, right? Variations in screen time. So our children often talk about, we never know what those other kids are talking about. Well, because there's a new video game, some new movie that came out, something with Disney, something with whatever. And so we want to be able to get them to say, you're fine exactly as you are. You are exactly where you need to be, and you know exactly how much you need to know. And we love you for that. And we encourage you to do, to learn more of what you're learning and things like that. And that will minimize that gap between that desire to have screen time and the comfort knowing that I have just enough of what I need.
That's great. I think I remember when your son told us about that, and I tried implementing it with my kids as well. And I think it definitely helps for them to know that, oh, we don't need, like, screen time isn't something that we have to function. And I also have found that doing things with screens, like my daughter's doing stop motion videos, things that are productive and creative, has helped satisfy the desire, but not necessarily have her sitting in front of a screen. So that's helped, and we do it together. But mashallah, Sister Amanda, did you want to add anything before we move on?
No, that pretty much sums it up. I mean, for us, it's like screen-free weekends. It's always screen-free. We have no classes, no nothing. I mean, it just, you got to balance out what your family needs are. And I know that if you're working at home, that it's going to look differently than what it's going to look like in my home, you know? So I don't want any parents to be at home feeling bad about their situation. You just got to balance it. You know, whatever it is, you're just doing your best. However you got to do your best, that's all that you really can do. So if you're balancing working and the child is watching, you know, Omar and Hannah, and you've done your best to like pick a good program, then it's okay. You know, you got to do what you got to do in your circumstances. It may not be the same as my experience or, you know, any other person. So just don't take it like there's only one way to do something.
Shella, we in a few weeks we are working on a panel that talks about the effects on screen time on children and how to, especially with distance learning, and how to really work with screen time in a way that you're not, because my daughter's eyes turn red if she watches more than like 30 minutes. And we talked about that, like, you know, this is affecting you physically, and so setting those limits based on what our body, but also, you know, there are ways that screens affect us physically, and so we'll be talking about that in a few weeks, inshallah, to delve more deeply into that. But both of you touched on the next topic, and that was a parent feeling just overwhelmed or maybe just split in many directions. And so we've had some different questions, and I just want to kind of read them because they all touch on something a little bit different. One is, don't parents get overworked? Do they never get a break from homeschool? Is it always just homeschool and housework? Another is, how do you balance the role of the parent and the teacher? Sometimes as a teacher, I find that I'm more strict than I am as a mother. And I feel stressed out by teaching, work, and all the responsibilities around the house. So just that general topic of how do you as a parent create a balance for yourself?
You know, I think for so many, a lot of these points kind of go together, and I'm not sure if everyone's kind of seeing that, but it's like delegating and playing that lead. Okay, so at my house, I'm the leader, right? Even though my husband is the leader, but I mean, I'm the one that manages the household, right? So he sees things that aren't up to par, so he'll fix it. You know, if he doesn't like something, he'll fix it. You know, it's not all on me as my partner. Even if it was, okay, let's say that he's working all the time and it's all on me. My children are part of keeping our house together, right? So it's like moms, especially, don't have to play martyr. That's not the way Islam works. That's not the way our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us to treat our families, was like all the stuff is on women, and then no, it's not. As leaders, I think part of it is, are we delegating? Are we incorporating everyone that's in our community, or like in our home, right? That little community in your home. I feel like we get so burnt out because we're not either expressing what our needs are, either to our partner or to our children, saying, okay, I need 20 minutes to go, you know, take a jog or go walk outside or take a shower or whatever the case may be, and not explaining. You know, sometimes it's, you know, we don't even know what we want, but just saying, okay, I need a timeout, I need to go run and do this, or using or leaning on one another, right? And not trying to take on all the roles. Now, when I'm working, okay, I'll explain. I think some families have this. There are times when I have to work. And it's not during the school day usually. Like if the kids have certain time that they have during the school, I'm flexible with what I need to do, but I lean on my kids. I feel like I'll tell them, okay, so because I'm working, you're gonna work, you're gonna make some money. Okay, so I need you to do this and this and this with the little ones, and they're kind of babysitting, right? Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes it's their duty as a sibling, you know, to help out in that way. But I feel like because I'm working, I'll show them they can work too, right? So we kind of work together so I can make that work. And that's the benefit of having, you know, such a wide range of kids. When they were younger, all my work was done during nap time and after they went to sleep. So not a lot of sleeping got done for me. But because of my partner and we relayed, we were able to work together to get through those years, right? So I feel like balance is going to take some organization and some delegation. And these things are not strong suits of mine. I'll be the first to admit that. However, that my husband, it is a strong suit. So the minute I tell him, okay, this is the what I'm facing, how can I do this better? Or, you know, he'll chip in, or he'll give advice, or he'll say, okay, I'm gonna step up and I'm gonna take this on, or whatever the case may be. But I wish women would stop trying to do everything and start delegating.
And I can add to that, because to the one being delegated to, and the one who's typically not around, to be, you know, to be able to support. I think, you know, one of the really amazing things about homeschooling is that, on the one hand, it is a tremendous sacrifice, typically on the mothers, and you know, my wife is a part of that, and so we want to acknowledge that, just how much that takes out of a person, right, on a human level. In terms of emotions, in terms of just the daily routine, in terms of, you know, physical, you know, just how they're feeling that day, all of that. But the reality of this is that, number one, children are very, you know, much inclined towards unconditional love. Like, they're not connecting their love to you, or love of you, to what you're doing for them in terms of homeschooling. That's not their concern. Their concern is that you are being right with them, and they are able to, you know, benefit, if you will, from their presence, from your presence. And so oftentimes I want to, you know, remind people, in as much as, you know, we say this about the sisters and mothers who are taking this, that I think it would be unfair to try to be a superwoman based on somebody else's standards. Set the standard and the tone for your homeschool, for your home. And as Sister Amanda said, you know, as a team, a husband, wife, if that's the case, and if it's just one parent alone, a single parent managing it, but set the tone and the pace that's manageable for you. Have a way to evaluate on a tip, you know, if it needs to be on a daily basis, to say, how is that working out? You know, we've tried, for example, you know, the waking up for Fajr, especially in the winter months, and then staying up. All right, and then seeing how that goes. And sometimes it, you know, it works, but then sometimes there's a level of tiredness because we didn't protect the night before, right? So 2 or 3 nights it might work, where you can still get up and then everybody's awake and, you know, up and about. But then if you don't protect the night before, and people went to bed late, or they were just groggy, or they ate late, or whatever happened, it will affect the next day. But that's not something to take personal. That's not to say, oh my God, you know, I'm failing, or, you know, we are failing as parents. We're just trying our best. Now, should that mean there should be no schedule? Maybe not. There is unschooling. You're welcome to, you know, to go that direction, and that's fine. But to the extent that you have a schedule and you're being human about it, you're realizing that there may be times when we just feel burnt out, right? There may be times when, as Sister Amanda said, work has to happen. Right? If I'm having to work and physically not around, and my wife is not well, and so the elders have to step up, the elder children step up, and they know that, you know, just give mom a little bit of time, or let her rest for a little bit, and then we can pick back up. Grandparents and others now in the pandemic, and other relatives, you know, you can set up a WhatsApp call, or, you know, something for just a little bit of time, just a little bit of break time. There's so many, you know, so much humor associated with homeschooling. One of the books on homeschooling had like a book of jokes, and it said like how, you know, in typical schools you have a teacher's break room, right, or someplace where they go to take a break. The joke was that it showed that it was clearly the bathroom, but the sign outside the bathroom said, you know, teacher's break room, right? So it's like, oh my God, like, this is the only time when I can just be on my own. And even then, if you have the youngest of them, they may be banging on the door, and it may actually not happen. So we want to not get to a point where we become so frustrated with ourselves that it starts to be taken out on the children, or impact their ability to appreciate homeschooling, right? We don't want them to get frustrated with it. And so it takes a lot of tweaking, a lot of evaluation. A lot of times my wife and I, you know, on the phone, if I'm traveling, or in person, early in the morning after Fajr, or late at night, we're debriefing, constantly debriefing, you know, so-and-so today was acting out, so-and-so today wasn't paying attention, so-and-so today was really, you know, very helpful. How can I then use all those pieces of information to then modify the next day, one day at a time, just one day at a time? That's all we can ask of each other.
And mashallah, that's true. And just taking one day at a time definitely takes the pressure off and inshallah makes things easier. You know, one of the things that's come up a few times is the different personalities of parent, teacher. Do you find that as you guys are, you know, with your children, do you have a teacher personality? It's an interesting question that's actually come up a few times where parents are feeling like I'm in teacher mode, I'm in parent mode, and maybe they like their teacher mode, but they don't like their parent mode, or they don't like their, you know, so that's been kind of all over the place. But how do you guys feel about that? Is that something you can overcome, or is it just something that's part of being homeschooling parent?
You know, for us, I don't know that I have a teacher mode. It's kind of like that's who I am. I mean, anyways, I do think that as they've gotten older, I've had to look for ways to engage with them and find things that they like to do and try to engage. Whether that be, you know, right now because of COVID, I feel like the older ones are a little bit more into, okay, that's Minecraft or whatever. So I feel like I try to play with them a little bit and try to, you know, I feel like playing, even if it's your way. Like I don't like to sit and play dolls and things like that. That's not my thing. But they're gonna play like a game or something, like a short game, not Monopoly or something like that. I feel like you need to play to your strengths. Like I know I like these little games, you know, with like you bounce the ball into something, or like there's certain things that I like, and I feel like I like to play to that. I love the website Kahoot to play like trivia games and things like that. So I go with what I like to do, thus making it fun and not so much a chore. There are things that I'm like, I just don't really like, and I'll try to do them for their sake, but I feel like they can tell, you know what I mean? So I try to be authentic when I engage with the games and things like that, and things that I enjoy doing, and showing them that side of me. Now, when it comes to certain things with schoolwork, I mean, they already know that it's what it is, you know, like we've already discussed it. I have already heard out your points and what you have to say about curriculum, especially my older kids now. So it's like they've chosen what they wanted to do. So it's like, okay, well, you got to get done what you need to get done. We've already, you know, put the rules and how we're going to do it. We can sit down and we can kind of assess how things are going, but this is what has to be done, regardless, whether you like it, whether you don't like it. You've been in on the conversation, so we kind of move from there. With the little ones, not a lot of, I mean, it's all fun and play. And I think that's what we got to remind ourselves. I think at one point, my oldest, we were sitting down and trying to write. And I learned my lesson from that particular child, that it really shouldn't be, if there's crying and all of that stuff when they're little, I mean at like 5, 6 years old, then we're probably not choosing the right thing for us. It's okay, especially when you're homeschooling, to delay certain things or wait 6 months and try again. You got time. I feel like we are got so much pressure on us to hit those benchmarks that we talked about yesterday, then that children aren't really ready for. So just remember, I think when you're switching from teacher mode to mom mode, that with the little ones, there shouldn't be a whole lot of switching, right? It should just be kind of fun and enjoyable. And as they get older, they should be having a lot of say in what they're doing and what they're studying. So I feel like there shouldn't really be a whole big switch, because they've kind of been in on the conversation, and you kind of know, okay, well, they already know that we got to do certain things, you know, math and things like that. And these are things, and they've even, you know, we go through and do the assessments, and they get to choose which math they want to do. If they want to continue what they're doing, or they want to reassess and pick something else, that's up to them. But I feel like there's not a lot of pushback because they're in on it. So going from teacher to mom, just include them, and I feel like there won't be as much of a switch to have to go up and down.
And yeah, and not much else to add other than to say that, you know, there has to be a complementarity between husband and wife. So sometimes it can be a pass off if they're both available and to be around, so that if the one needs to be a disciplinarian, right, and something is happening, then one can switch off and do that. If the one is very much in intensely work mode and may only have a little bit of time and maybe not. I mean, can we talk about Monopoly? Like really, for God's sake, like, oh my God, like every time the kids mention Monopoly, it's like a trigger. I'm like, I see my life passing by. Like I literally see my life passing by, and I'm like, can we not do Monopoly? Can we do anything else, right? And so,
Please.
so it becomes a situation whereby you are essentially, you know, from an Islamic sort of point of view, you are the teacher as a mother and a father. You are the role models. You are, you know, so in the sense that we're saying there's a formal teacher role, it is only to ensure that concepts have been learned according to what is expected by the Commonwealth of Virginia, or, you know, a typical sort of age appropriate or grade appropriate level of learning. That's really all we're talking about. In all other senses, there's so much more to be, you know, to be had by a nurturing personality, right? Where we have the wherewithal especially, and my wife is to be commended for that, because she's so much more patient and so much more structured in how she wants to do things. So she I think if we asked her, she probably would say that she, you know, goes in and out from parent to teacher, but she does it seamlessly, right? My life is, I mean, I literally teach for a living as a professor, but my students are graduate students. They're mostly master students, and some of them could even be older than me in terms of the, you know, their where they are in their career, and PhD students. So for me to switch from teaching at that level to teaching, you know, children is actually a switch. Like I have to make a mental switch and say, okay, here's what I'm going into now. These are not only my children. I may be, you know, unconsciously biased even towards my own children, because I know their personalities. I know, you know, that one may be more inclined towards math than the other, or science or art or whatever. I have to keep myself in check, right? And so that I'm not in any way, you know, overwhelming them with my constant disciplining and focusing on that, in as much as I'm not overwhelming them that I only want to talk to them about learning, right? And so again, back to that balanced environment whereby you can make fun, by the way, out of learning, so that they can see you, you know, feeling in some way of a downtime, if you will, but there's still learning taking place. It's not structured perhaps, but there's still, you know, concepts being, if you will, shared and understood.
Thank you both. One of the questions we had that just came up is that a lot of the advice that we're giving, it seems like you guys have established these routines over time and these relationships. Many of our families are just deciding to homeschool this year. And so, you know, they're pulling the children out of school, public and private. And so they're curious, what tips would you give them for where they should start now, the school year, to kind of put some of these systems into place? If you had to say, you know, start here, or here are some priorities, well, what tips would you give them?
I mean, right now, right? So the switch, so we've been spending a lot of time together, all of us, right, at home. I'm sure you've witnessed some of the, you know, a lot of pros, a lot of cons on personalities and things like that, and what needs work and what doesn't need work, and, you know, what's their strengths, what's not their strengths. I think if you haven't, which is fine, you might be busy and things are going on, now is the time to kind of settle in and talk to them. I mean, especially the older ones. I mean, I'm talking like second grade and up. Talk to them, being excited. I like how the speaker yesterday with Sister Kauthar, and how she talked about how excited she was about it, and how, you know, we're going to do all this and we're going to have a lot of fun with it, and we can go here and we can do this. And I mean, there are things that are open and we can check those things out. The library is still open, you know, that we can grab a lot of stuff from, and there's amazing resources online. So take the time now, even just perusing, like look at your library system and see what it's got in terms of engaging their reading, and see, okay, what are they into right now? What are the books they're going to pick up? They're looking at the online with you. What things are, and put them on hold, and then go pick those bad boys up, and, you know, have the kids reading and seeing what they're gravitating towards. Your kid doesn't like to read, I bet you they will like to read something if it's up their alley, right? I mean, there's something, trust me. I mean, at one point I thought, okay, one of my kids is not into reading. No, that's not what it is at all. Is that she liked a certain thing, and it wasn't at our house. You know, I'm all about the nonfiction and, you know, learning and all of this, and she just wanted some fun stuff. She wanted graphic novels. She wanted things that were picture books, and now you can't stop her from reading. You know what I mean? So it's just a matter of finding, okay, what is this child's interest, and what are we going to be looking for? You know, that type of thing. So I think for those that are just now getting into it, this is observation mode mostly, and kind of seeing, okay, let me pay more attention. Let me see what they're gravitating towards. If it's computers and things like that, turn off the screens a little bit, so they can get a little busy with life and what's going on, and how do they busy themselves. If you tell them, okay, today we're not going to do any screens, figure out, watch them. What are they going to do with that time? You know what I mean? Are they going to start, some of the kids will start pulling out paper, drawing, maybe doing some folding, maybe some, just sitting there. I mean, I don't know what everybody's interests are, but just give them that time to be bored and then watch what they do with that. Now, there's going to be certain things like that everybody's going to want to talk about curriculum, and we did some of that yesterday. Gonna have to know at some point, is this what kind of learner the child is, right? Are they auditory? Are they need more visual? And you can see that by time. The first curriculum that you pick, I would go easy on. I wouldn't spend a fortune. I told the story yesterday where it was like, I did go ahead and get a box all-in-one curriculum, and it sat there for the year, because I figured out that you know, the kid needed something else that wasn't along the lines of that box curriculum. I'm hoping that through these talks and things, you guys can see that just take a little bit at a time. Nothing has to be done all at once, especially if you're you know, settling into homeschooling and it's not something that's just temporary. Take your time. It's okay to take your time. There's no rush. It's amazing what children will learn and the amount they can learn when they're given the opportunity and the world at their feet, you know? So I feel like just observing, that's critical. Observing and seeing what they gravitate toward. Give them time to be bored. That's another one. And just and communicate with them from second grade. I mean, you can even talk to kindergartners. Kindergartners love everything. They just love life, right? So it's very easy, I feel like, to engage them. But once you start hitting second grade, they do have things that they are interested in, and you can spot them. We all love our children. We know what they like and what they don't like, you know. So hopefully Brother Altif will cover up any holes I didn't hit.
No, I'm learning myself. So I mean, you know, it's an interesting time, and it's a historic time, you know, to be in a pandemic, and we want to make, you know, a special dua for all of those families who are really struggling with how to make this work. Right? We have homeschooling as an option, but there are many families who are also going to be just online learning because the schools aren't maybe opening back up, and so they're going to have to manage how to do that at home. What we want to say is that we as a community, within our community, you are not alone. You know, Sister Khadija mentioned at the beginning of the program, but she also, I think an email may have gone out with all the resources, right, that are available. There are people who would be willing to speak to you, who are other homeschooling mothers and fathers who could be resources to you. So start to first identify your support system that's going to help you through this, and then make those, you know, speed dial numbers and emails and you know, WhatsApp and whatever, to just get that ready so that you have that as your go-to. Then secondly, when you identify the resources, I think it's critically important to, you know, to do some level of assessment of each child. And Sister Amanda referred to this, you know, just get a sense of what is going to be within the sort of, you know, finite subjects that can be there for their age. What is the one thing that they gravitate towards more than others, right? If it's art and that's what they're into, even though the drawings just make no sense, it's art. At that point, it's art. Get over the whole thing of, you know, my God, how are they ever going to become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever? It's art. And that's what they can do right now. Learn to acknowledge that that will be the subject that'll be their highlight of the day, now while you get the others done. So as you develop the you know, resource list, look for things that will particularly, you know, help your child and their, as we mentioned, personality that they will gravitate towards, and then get more of that while you include the others. Now remember, we always go back to our, our own religion, that the Quran was actually revealed not all at one time. Let's repeat that. It was not revealed all at one time. And the surahs that were revealed were very, very connected, oftentimes, to what was happening in the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, even though all of that was predestined. So there are stories that are very directly connected in the revelation to exactly what was happening. There are verses that are answers, literally answers. The Quran says, they ask you about so and so, say to them, this is the answer. So that is the approach of homeschooling, is that you want to have everything available. You want to have, the resources available, the support system available, but you want to also go minimally, 1 to 2 weeks at a time. So maybe you sit down and you develop a 1 week routine now because you're just getting into it, and you kind of midweek recalibrate. And you say, things are going well, I'll maintain course and we can keep going. Things are not going well, wow, nothing worked out, then go to the support system. Hey, did anybody else have this, anybody, face this? Are there any pitfalls? Are there something that I'm doing wrong? Something I should be doing differently, or, or how did you manage, whatever, and then recalibrate and then continue. If you approach it this way, I think it honors the children, because remember, they did not sign up for this. And our children often reminded us, they're like, you guys chose homeschooling for us. Yes, we did. We are in charge and we chose homeschooling. You think life is all, rose, peach, and, roses for, all the other kids, because you don't know about their lives. You don't know what else they're going through. But because we are in charge of you, we have a trust and amana to fulfill with you. Here's what we're trying to do. And when we make a mistake, we have to admit it. So if there's something with the calibration of the schedule, let's talk to the kids and say to them, I'm sorry, I know that was overwhelming, or I'm sorry it was too much, I'm sorry that didn't work out. What about we try this differently? And involve them to a degree. We're not talking about like a full-on, if you have the stamina to do that, you may, but to a degree, involve them in the tweaking, so that again they feel, like they take responsibility for the scheduling and the and the development, if you will, of the week schedule.
Mashallah. Thank you so much. Our final topic that's come up a lot is the balance of the Islamic learning, Islamic studies and Quran, with the academic topics. So how, and a lot of families are wondering, how do we balance that? How do we cover everything? That's the responsibility of a homeschooling family. And what tips would you have for families who are trying to figure that out?
Okay, for us, right? Part of the mission statement, and we talked about this yesterday, the mission statement being part of the reason why we decided that we're going to homeschool is the Islamic foundation, the prayers, and making sure that that identity is solid. So it's very important to me and their dad to solidify that Muslim identity. So it's pretty non-negotiable Monday through Friday. We 15, 20 minutes a day. That's it. I think that's a pretty simple goal. Also, we do Quran review, we do prophet stories for the little ones. We use apps. Miraj has excellent stories on it that we use at bedtime sometimes. The little kids love it. Just whatever. For the little ones, learning Arabic, being able to read Arabic, the big ones already know. They work on their tajweed, the older ones. So it's 15 to 30 minutes every day, Monday through Friday. We've been through several different resources. We've been through the masjid, which did an exceptional job on my eldest, and the other two after him with tajweed. Mashallah, it's great. So we found things that worked for our family that at that particular moment in time. Now it's going to change, because right now we're in a situation where it's not as accessible. We did use online Studio Arabia, we used that. So I think it's going to be a matter of, is this part of your mission statement? And when things don't go right, when I have a just terrible day, and it happens, where we just don't get along, we're angry and things aren't going right, whether it be with one kid or several kids, I mean, there's gonna be bad days, right? And so, or bad months, or even a bad year, you know, let's be real, right? So it happens. I mean, it totally happens. So I reflect, and I'm talking and I'm basing it off of my husband, right? And we're reflecting, okay, have we done what we set out to do in our mission statement, which is, you know, part of it, I'm not going to say all of it, but part of it is creating good people, right, who love their deen and are, you know, in the works of becoming with great character, right, and loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's part of our mission statement, and we look back and we say, you know what, we have been, we've all been praying, we've been doing our best since we've been given to our neighbors, and Islam has been part of what we've been trying to incorporate throughout our lives. MashaAllah, it was a good year if we look at it that way, you know, not based off of academics or anything, because that's not part of my mission statement right now. Right now it is, you know, on character building. So it's like sometimes we think, okay, it was just a terrible year or whatever, and really it was a great year if you are focused on what your main vision is. Sometimes we get so caught up in when, oh my God, you know, they don't have their multiplication tables down, they're never going to get it. And we forget that that's not why we're setting out to homeschool, you know, not so that they're going to multiply and divide on time and, you know, and according to the benchmarks. It's more about, you know, for us, creating that good person. So focusing on Islam for us, 15, 20 minutes a day, that just making that commitment to doing it every day and not ever letting it go. Math might not get done one day, or science might not get get done one day, but we never let go of that 15, 20 minutes. I think anybody can handle that, right? It's 15, 20 minutes. We all got that time. Don't lie. You got 15, 20 minutes. You know, so that for us, that's kind of what worked and helps us maintain that balance.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you so much. And I think, you know, Sister Amanda said it right, that all else can be, you know, sort of acquired and on its own schedule, right? But I think what we are held responsible for as parents, and ultimately in an environment, actually, don't forget. So we're not teaching our children. So I'm really glad when people ask about this question about Islam and Arabic and Quranic studies and so forth, in a vacuum, right? We're actually teaching our children about their religion, and then to love their religion, and then to practice those teachings in an environment that is systematically dedicated to antagonizing and presenting our religion as literally the source of all problems in the world. So imagine you're a child, you know, and often like our go-to station is NPR, and we're listening, and they're in the car with us. They're hearing things about Islam and Muslims, and you know, and this happened and that happened. So we have a even greater task to make sure that they understand that this life literally means nothing if in getting ahead in life we left behind the main source of life, which is the Quran and our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's really critical that we ingrain in them in a very loving way how important it is for them to know that they're a Muslim, and that they are you know, from a part of an ummah that is you know, dedicated to seeking the pleasure of Allah. So that doesn't have to happen, as Sister Amanda said, in a rigorous way where they start to really feel tense or stressed when it's Islamic studies time, or you know, prayer time, or Quran, or whatever. They need to come at it in a way that they approach it themselves, right? We've been doing my daughter, and there are a lot of resources. Sister Amanda said, you know, we could go on and on. There are resources for classes online, in person. You know, my daughter, who is a 9-year-old, just finished a 2-year course, and some of your children may have been a part of it with Sister Raghad. Ustazah Raghad did a Seerah class, right, for these younger girls, and it was girls only, and then she even had a graduation for them and everything. So there's many resources. We don't have to know everything about our religion to teach our children. We can make use of the resources that are there, and then we can just make sure that we're making it comfortable for them so that they don't, again, as I mentioned, get stressed or tense. Now, what I can say is that thankfully, built within our schedule are the 5 prayers, right? So to some degree, you can kind of add on some things to those prayer times, right? So for the youngest of kids, we were talking about the sort of the rites of prayer. So in terms of wudu and basic things with cleanliness and hygiene and things, so that can be tied in at age appropriate levels. For the older children, maybe it's to emphasize the prayer, this praying the sunnah prayer, and in the sunnah prayer they practice some of the surahs they're learning. So there's a connection between learning and an application, right? Having a quick 5-minute lesson after a prayer on a particular verse or a particular hadith or some lesson that's helpful to everybody as a collective. Whatever you do, just remember our goal is to ensure that they love connecting with the religion. That we cannot be the source of trauma. The religion and learning the religion cannot be the source of trauma. It cannot be the source. And I'll give you a personal example. I was very big with the elder 2 children that everybody prays. When the household is praying, everybody prays. Then my wife realized that, with the gap between about 4 years or so with the younger ones, that they may not be inclined to pray right when we're praying. So then she came up with a routine. Well, if you're the 6-year-old, you have to at least do 2 or 3 of the prayers with us. So typically they're not awake at Fajr time, right? So maybe they'll do the Dhuhr and the Asr and maybe Maghrib because they're maybe asleep by Isha time. So that staggered, sort of very tailored approach is very, very instrumental in making sure that each and every child loves that religion, loves the religion, loves the Prophet ﷺ. A lot of times they'll just break out in nasheed on their own. One of the ophthalmologists who's mashallah tabarakallah, a hafiz of the Quran, then became an amazing eye doctor. He's developed an amazing eye procedure for eye surgery. He posted on Facebook that I think he has 2 children, that he goes, can someone help me? I have a problem. He's like, after the Eid al-Adha days finished on Monday, when we're doing the takbirat after every prayer, he's like, my kids have not stopped doing the takbirat. They refuse to stop. And I know I responded like, that's a good problem, right? That's a good problem to have, because now they're just into it, right? Let them be. I mean, the salawat, the nasheed, everything should be connected, and then make a brief lesson out of it. Pick something, minimal out of it and say, oh, by the way, this is there. And by the way, this is what's important with this, and so forth, inshallah. But remember, you have the resources, we have the resources, and inshallah, Allah will bless you for your intentions. Make lots of dua. One of the things we often forget is it's so critical to constantly be making dua, and let our children know that how critical the dua is, inshallah, to their own success and to our success. And when you get those notices, by the way, on email from different masjids saying so-and-so is sick or so-and-so has passed away, make a collective dua. If it's somebody who's ill, make a collective dua as a family and say, oh Allah, grant so-and-so, give them cure, give them healing, and that the children start to understand, wow. And then when someone gets better, say, remember we made dua for so-and-so, alhamdulillah, we got the news that they're better now, right? Or if they're raising money for something, hey, do you guys want to contribute? What can you contribute? Make it a charitable experience and so forth.
Thank you both so much. I've had the issue of the good problem as well. My son used to give adhan in the middle of Target. And heart just giving adhan, and I'd be like, okay, it's not prayer time. We can do that later. So may Allah continue to guide all of us, and especially our children, inshallah. I want to thank Sister Amanda, Brother Altaf, so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us. Sister Amanda, thanks for joining us again. It has been such a beneficial event, alhamdulillah. We have one more event. If you have a tween that's going to turn teen soon, or if you have a teen, inshallah, Sister Mona will be back and Sister Kothar will be back with us on Sunday. So inshallah, we hope that everyone will join us again. My kids are little, but I'm always trying to learn about teens. So it's always great to start early. And if you have enjoyed our programming, please donate generously to MIC, inshallah, to help us continue the program that we're doing. Jazakallah khair again, and inshallah, we will see you on Sunday.